Today, of course, let's talk about what's going to happen with Bitcoin. There are some huge events and decisions to be made this week. We got this big ruling over the SEC, right? First step, SEC lost. Now they can't use the same excuses they have used before, which is we can't have a spot Bitcoin ETF because there's too much fraud and manipulation. We need these fund managers to prove that there aren't these things, which is virtually impossible because even with, say, gold, okay, or the futures market, or any commodities, or anything, right, there is going to always be fraud and manipulation, especially when it comes to something that's traded worldwide, right? Bitcoin is not just a U.S. thing. Just like gold is not a U.S. thing. Silver is not a U.S. thing, right? There's a lot of countries, a lot of people buying and trading. So these arguments were never valid to begin with. It was just an excuse for the SEC to say, yeah, this, let's give them something vague and broad because they can never disprove it, right? So we never have to approve a Bitcoin spot ETF. Well, the court's like, no, you can't do that, SEC. Okay, Gary Gensler, you can't just make up the rules and just pretend like that's just the way it is, right? So the court shot back at the SEC saying you can't use these broad, generic, vague excuses for not approving a Bitcoin spot ETF, right? So now, if they do want to deny, they have to give some new reasons, some really good reasons. And here's the thing. Because of this, whatever reasons they give, now these fund managers have ammunition. They could just go ahead and sue the SEC and say those are invalid, right? I mean, this sets the precedent for a lot of lawsuits against the SEC because they've been taking a lot of L's, okay? And they're probably going to take more L's, okay? So this is good. This is very, very good. You know why? Because the big events that I've been referring to, there's 7 other ETFs besides Grayscale. Okay, and the first deadlines are coming. In fact, this week, there are a lot. Can we get the very first Bitcoin spot ETF approved by the end of this week? I would say there's a chance. There's always a chance, right? Just like if you buy a lottery ticket, there's always a chance. It may be small, but there's a chance. Or, they don't deny it. They just push it back, right? That's why there's like 4 deadlines. So I'm still thinking the SEC, because Gary is a sourpuss. He does not want to just cave, right? Unless Larry Fink is telling him, just do it. What's the point of waiting a few more months when you could do it now? Overall, it's just a matter of time. When one, if not all, will be approved. And then we're going to see billions upon billions upon billions upon billions flowing into the space, and all these guys will need to buy billions upon billions upon billions of Bitcoin to be able to load up for the shares that they're going to be offering, right? So absolutely fantastic, but maybe we get a surprise. Maybe Gary just caves because of Larry Fink's like, you just lost, my man. You better just go ahead and release it. So maybe by the end of the week, on Friday, we're going to get the very first spot ETF. And if so, yesterday was just nothing. It's a blip. But, the jump that we will see when the first spot Bitcoin ETF gets approved will be enormous, in the thousands. If you look right here, we had some liquidations. We had 117 million of shorts liquidated. Again, this is why you don't play with leverage. I bet a lot of short sellers did not expect a huge ruling and a huge, jump, right? But, you go back, longs too, 50 million longs, right? Like basically what I've been saying, the only people that win with leverage, okay, are the ones that are running exchanges. Exchanges win because they collect the fees no matter what. But for traders, if you're using lots of leverage, eventually you go get caught one way or another because you can't predict. Your lines can't predict a grayscale, victory, right? For example. So you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. There's something brewing, and when we get that huge push, it's going to be absolutely crazy. It's going to be unlike anything we have seen before, possibly. Like, we're hitting like all-time low on volatility, on volume, on trading activity. Man, it could be wild. All right, so here's something else. Here's something else that shows Bollinger Bands. The squeeze is happening. The squeeze is so close. I mean, the band is so close, right? And if you look at how squeezed we are, guess what? The last two times was when Bitcoin went on a crazy parabolic run, right? Back in 2012 and back in 2016. We're at that same point. Bollinger Bands showing Bitcoin, because of this non-movement, is being squeezed. And you know what happens when you squeeze something? There's a eruption. And that's what's going to happen with Bitcoin, especially if we get that very first spot Bitcoin ETF approved, right? So, I mean, even the technicals, okay? Even the technicals agree with this. Here's another technical chart, right? Look at this. All the previous times when Bitcoin took a little dip or was stagnant or was down or when volatility was low and when it was fuddish, right? That's when Bitcoin exploded upwards. And will we see the same thing happen? Yes. Yes, we will. So, all good stuff. All good stuff. Okay, now, in terms of Grayscale themselves, they hold 635,000 Bitcoin. So in comparison, look at, how much a purpose Bitcoin ETF, which exists in Canada, they only have about 23,000 Bitcoins. And then you look at MicroStrategy, 140,000. I mean, you look at all these, Grayscale is definitely the preferable, choice for a company to have the very first spot Bitcoin ETF because they simply have the most amount of Bitcoins. It just comes down to that, right? So it makes a whole lot of sense. Now, after today's victory,